You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christie Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello, welcome to the show. I am excited to share all of what I'm about to share with you, but I'm also just really excited to simply get it all off my chest, out of my head, and initially onto a Word document, and now verbally expressed via this podcast. I mention this because I'm honestly not sure which is more exciting, that I get to share with you that I met someone really important and special to me in my life, or that I just get to get all of this out of me. Anyway, this episode is about my Dr. Becky experience and all the things that led to it and have come from it. So, first and foremost, if you don't know who Dr. Becky is, please take a moment while you're listening, as long as you're not driving, and Google her or look her up on Instagram. Dr. Becky is also known as the Millennial Parenting Whisperer by Time Magazine. She has many New York Times articles written about her, including her Sunday morning routine. She is a New York Times #1 best-selling author, a top of the charts podcast host. She's been on Good Morning America, The Today Show, CNN. She's been on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast with Glennon Doyle. Oh, and did I mention she has about 1.5 million followers on Instagram. Dr. Becky is a clinical psychologist, mom of 3, and founder of Good Inside, an online membership community for parents. I started following Dr. Becky on Instagram at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and she had just a few thousand followers. So yes, what I'm saying is that everything that I just mentioned to you about her, with the exception of having kids and her career as a psychologist, all happened in just about 2, going on about 3 years. Early in the pandemic, I DM'd Dr. Becky about a tricky situation with my kids, and she sent me voice messages back via DM. This happened twice. I don't know, this just made such an impression on me that at the time, yeah, she was, a newer Instagram user, I guess, and didn't have 1.5 million followers, but she was growing, and I don't know, just whether she had 1.5 million or not, I don't know, just the fact that she sent me voice messages about my kids and what we were going through really made an impression on me. Her videos that she was making, and still does, but at the time during the pandemic, they were really, really thorough, and I don't know, they just make parenting makes sense. And I don't want to at all want to sound like I'm simplifying her work, but I'm making the point that to me, this is how she's really good at what she does, because she just makes really complicated and intense, complex ideas, strategies. She makes parenting make sense and seem simple. Anyway, I shared her account with every mom that I know, telling them to go watch all of her videos, read her carousel posts, and watch her daily stories about life with kids at home during a pandemic. I actually still have a daily calendar reminder that pops up every morning at 10 a.m. that reads, "There is nothing wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with my kids. I can cope with this." I put it there at Dr. Becky's suggestion, and there are many mornings where I ignore it. I don't need it. And there are quite a few mornings where it is the exact reminder I need. It's amazing now thinking back on those quarantine days, right? Like I needed a daily reminder in my phone to validate how hard the experience was, how it wasn't my fault, and how none of what was going on meant that there was anything wrong with anyone, including my kids, in my house. It's really hard times. And Dr. Becky is credited by a lot of parents for helping them just get through. Anyway, her account and her reach grew and grew and grew, and still to this day keeps growing. I got an email a few weeks, maybe a month ago, about Dr. Becky's book tour. I bought a ticket immediately for one of her New York City stops, and that book tour event was last week. I went, and as I mentioned kind of in the introduction of this show, things were happening that led to it, and things are happening now since. So this experience, I don't know, I'm going to go now a little bit, like I usually script things now, and now I don't have a script because I think it's important to just share the experience. And, you know, the day of the event, I'm getting ready and I'm rehearsing in my head the question that I want to ask her. And as much as I wanted the answer to my question, what I knew I really wanted to do was make an impression. And I hope that that doesn't sound horrible. I hope that that just sounds like a person who has been a huge fan of someone who has been trying for a while to get her to come on her podcast, and who just feels like this person, Dr. Becky, needs to be in my orbit of life. And so I don't know. I just really was like, okay, I want a question that I need it, and a question that I can genuinely want the answer to, but also know that it's going to leave an impression and be different from what anyone else might ask. And it's funny because that's what happened. Like, it's uncomfortable for me a little bit to toot my own horn here, but it's what happened. And if I'm really honest with myself, I knew it would. So I asked during the Q&A, I said to Dr. Becky, as a new entrepreneur, as someone who sees all that you're doing, the podcast, the book, the community, the empire, at the end of the day, you, Dr. Becky, still have to go home to your 3 kids. Like, how do you balance being this person who's building an empire, but also still coming home to be a mom? Here you are every day helping parents, helping kids all over the world, all over the country, everywhere. But you're still a mom. Like, do you worry about, the bond? Do you worry about being this person for so many other people, but then still having to come home and be the person for your kids and your family? And, it's funny because the part of her response that has stuck with me is about the fact that she said, I let's not pretend I do this to help people. She's like, but I really do all that I do because it lights me up. And she said, so the first thing she needed to do was to honor her conviction in that, and to honor that everything she's doing is for her. And because she's doing it for her, it makes her a better mom. It makes her a better wife. And she shared a story about, a time that she had spent away from her family and how that impacted her family for the good, and how everyone, kind of got used to her being away. And as much as they missed her, it was good for them to have the experience of her not being there and so forth. And, so I wanted the answer to that question, and it sticks with me. It's the conviction. It's relating it to my own life and knowing that there was a level of conviction needed in order to launch this podcast. But now a next level of conviction is needed in order to take this podcast to the next level. And On the drive home from this event, I had a lot of big feelings, a lot of big ideas, a lot of big thoughts, and I'm so grateful actually that I missed my turn off of the turnpike because apparently I needed a little extra time to process them before I went home. And the things that were coming to me were, I am good at this. I saw a woman at a book tour, at a book experience, a book event, and what I saw was a bunch of people in the audience wanting from her. They all wanted to ask her their specific question about their kid, their specific question about parenting. And what I saw was a person that I wanted to know more about. And so this is what I mean. Like, I think that might be what my superpower is seeing people who help people for who they are. As much as I wanted to sit there and ask her every little question about my kids and my house and my parenting, it's actually not what I wanted from her. I wanted to know how Becky, not Dr. Becky Kennedy, but how Becky goes home and is a mom, is a wife, is an entrepreneur, is a person building an empire. And, this is all kind of related to the mental health for content creators. And I know I've said this before in the show, but this is, making me feel like, yeah, this is definitely where my show needs to go. It's about the content creator. It's about the therapist. It's about the people helping people feeling seen. And, anyway, and so some of my other big thoughts and feelings and ideas were, I just need to go home and make stuff happen for myself. I need to be convicted in it. And I know if you've listened to the show, you've heard me say a lot that everything going on with my body image, and it's been a big block. And I have thoughts and I have times and I have feelings where I can't be a big public figure while I look like this. Like, that's a thought that I have. I can't be a person doing a book tour or on a stage giving a talk and look like this. And on the way home, it just was like, stop with that drama. If you start doing all the things you want to do, I'm sure your body will fall in line or you'll just stop caring about it. And what a relief that will be. The other thing it was making me think, and it reminded me of my conversation that I had last week with Ashley Rodrigues, is, yeah, I love my kids, but they're not enough. And I came home and I'm sharing all this with my husband, and I apologize, I'm a little all over the place. Like I said, I didn't fully script this one out. But a couple of the things that I said to my husband in sharing the, experience of seeing Dr. Becky was, I know what I'm doing, and I'm really good at this. I knew that I would ask a memorable question. I know how to ask a question that tells a story. I know the line between adding my personal story and still making it about the person I'm asking the question of. I know asking that question wouldn't just be an answer for me. It would hit home with so many of the parents in that room. And you know what? At least I'd say 6 to 8 women came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you so much for your question. That was a great question. I appreciated you asking that question. It hit home for me." And I needed that. And so anyway, I'm good at that. I know I'm good at that. And I basically said to my husband, I am too smart for everything with my podcast to not work. I'm too smart for it to not work, but I am spinning my wheels. And when I said to him the part about the kids not being enough and this isn't just a hobby, it needs to be a thing. I think he asked me, how do you know, or something like that. I just looked at him. I was like, oh, you can't make fun of me when I say this, but I'm supposed to change the world. And he's like, do you mean our world or, the world at large? And I'm like, both, but the world at large. And he's like, okay, good. Like, I'm glad you know that. But I am. And I just I feel like I'm letting a lot of things get in the way. And I shared recently with a friend, and if you're familiar with TikTok and Reels, you know that I mean this in the trending way and not in the actual way. But I was like, my toxic trait is seeing someone do something extraordinary at a very exceptional and expert and professional level and looking at it and going, yeah, I could do that. I'm reading Colleen Hoover's books, and at the end of every single one that I finish in a day, because I don't know about you, but I read those things literally in 24 to 48 hours, I think I could do that. Like, who do I think I am? I go to a Taylor Swift concert, and I think, I can't sing like that, but I could put on a show like that. I see Dr. Becky at a book event, and I see her, and I go, I could do that. And I live so much in like this state of imposter syndrome or this state of making excuses, and it's fear. It's fear. Yeah, I don't know. It is also though depression, right? So now I'm going to switch gears again, but I mentioned to my husband maybe a week or two before the event, I'm not depressed, but I'm doing depressed things. And I've said this to him before. And it's funny because that should be my first indicator that things are going downhill. But I don't have the fuzziness in my head, and I don't have like the sadness and things. But depressed things for me are when brushing my teeth feels like running a half marathon. Laundry is everywhere. I don't care to eat, but then I get so hungry, overly hungry, and I end up eating some half put together, like, stupid food, then feel like crap, and the cycle continues. I feel tired, but not tired in a way that can be slept off or caffeinated off. Tired in a way that when I look around my house, there's normally a switch that kicks off when I need to just like buzz through the house and get stuff done. And that switch doesn't kick off, so the house gets cluttered, which I know contributes to feeling depressed, but I can't get out of it. And if you know what I'm talking about, it's like I stopped exercising, I stopped moving, I stopped drinking water. It's like the things that you need to do become the hardest to do. And I'm feeling this happen. And then I go see Dr. Becky. I'm having all these big feelings and big thoughts. And I've heard depression described, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically when your actual self becomes disconnected from the version of your ideal self that you want. Again, paraphrasing, but that feels good to me. Like that hits for me. It's a disconnect. It's every day the Groundhog's Day of motherhood, of wifehood, of domestic household personhood, feeling really disconnected. And I'm disconnected in a lot of ways. I'm disconnected physically. My body does not feel like a body that I know and I'm comfortable in. And it gets really tricky when that disconnect is tied to my kids and mothering. And there came a point on last week, 2 days after the Dr. Becky experience, where like I was like, oh no, we're in a depression right now, because my thoughts spiraled and shifted in a way that I have enough self-awareness and enough education to know are depression thoughts. They're not actually my thoughts. And I know that because they're extreme and they're really deep. And what I was feeling was, should I have become a mom? There's nothing I can do about it now. I have to be a mom for the rest of my life. Like, how am I going to actually be a mom for the rest of my life? I don't want to end my life, but it would be really nice to be on an island somewhere with no one, having no one want anything from me, having no one care that I'm there, and I could just be. And all of that feels horrible. It feels horrible. It doesn't feel good to not want to be around the people you love and the people that love you and my own kids, for crying out loud. Like, and I know it's depression talking because, you know, through venting to my husband, I had a conversation with Adriana Keefe. I did some level of coping in the sense that I really had to acknowledge that those thoughts are depression and not me. And, you know, within the next day or so, I really started feeling better. And yeah, I'm like, whoa, like that's not what I want. That's not who I want to be. But what is it telling me? It's telling me that I'm not aligned. It's telling me that I can love my kids and my husband and my home and want to parent and wife and, you know, domestic house person. But these things can't be the core of who I am. They can't be my main existence. And I don't know, maybe that sounds nuts, but I need to step into my Dr. Becky era. I need to be convicted in this feeling that I want more, and no one is going to come and hand it to me. I have to do it. And it's like now, just in this moment, it's reminding me of all the body stuff, how I wanted to skip over acceptance. I wanted to skip over acceptance and just get to, I'm lean toned and tiny. And it's kind of the same thing here. I didn't want to accept that my life had really become mostly about mothering and wifing and household domesticating. Like, what is the term that I'm looking for in that? I can't, like you know what I mean? The person to take care of the house, right? Like, I don't know. I need to accept that that's what my life has been. And I need to accept that it's not what I want. Because there's so much shame in that, right? Like, I really thought that that's what I was going to want. I thought I was going to want, and I thought I was going to be completely fulfilled by making Pinterest bento box lunches for my kids and outfitting them and, you know, doing Halloween photo shoots and keeping a clean house. And really, I just don't, anyway, I don't know. Dr. Becky, meeting you was an experience. It was validating. Validating in that I'm good at this. I see you and I see your experience and I see it and think, yeah, I want that. I have to have that. It was also good because, you know, in this moment of depression and feeling overwhelmed, my husband and I talked about, you know, are there too many things on the plate? What do we need to take off? And he presented just as an option, not as a pressure, but does the podcast need to come off the plate? And no. That will lead to an absolute spiral. I can tell you that. And anyway, I don't know what other morals of the story there is, if there need to be more or not, if this was interesting enough, I hope, but I'm taking all this to therapy this week, I'll tell you that, because there's clearly more that needs to be fleshed out, but I'm also putting pen to paper today. I'm putting pen to paper on all the things in my brain, all of the ideas, all of the thoughts, and when I say ideas and thoughts, I mean all the ideas on what to do with this show and how to make it eventually Dr. Becky. But also the ideas on how I can get more help for myself and feel more fulfilled every day. And I was doing really well with that for a while, but I've gotten away from it. And I've gotten to a point of, oh, when this happens, I'll feel this way. No. I have to do those things, do things today to feel a certain way today. And I think that's it. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now. I don't know. Oh, anyway, Dr. Becky, thank you for being you, for helping all of us parents, and for being, a role model, really, for being a role model as a mom and a wife and an entrepreneur and a brand and an empire builder. And really, I always come back to, gosh, it didn't take her that long. I need to stop thinking that this is going to take a long time for me. It doesn't have to. And thank you for listening. And I hope I'm going to listen to this back now and hope that it makes enough sense to air. So anyway, I will catch you next time. And have a great day. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.